Hello and welcome to this month's tasting edition of the Wine Club for Wine Access. My name is Sir Lucero, Master Sommelier, and I'm here with my colleague Vanessa Conlin, Master of Wine Candidate, and we're going to take you through the 6 wines that we're going to be using for this month's Wine Club in April of 2018.
Great, so we'll taste these wines with you, and we hope you enjoy them as much as we do. The wine I'm tasting now is the 2015 Chateau Malescasse au Medoc. So this wine is from the left bank of Bordeaux. It's a blend of 3 different varieties, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Petit Verdot. So this estate lies at one of the highest points in the Medoc. It's right in between Margaux and Saint-Julien. So in the glass, there's a ton of really black fruited notes, sort of blackberry, black plum, a little bit of mint and graphite as well. Tasting it, there's a lot going on. So there's some real chewy tannins to this wine, gives it a great structure. There's also a really freshness to the acidity, almost a mintiness to the acidity. It's on the medium to full-bodied side, and just really full of this sort of minerally graphite, lots of that black fruit, some crushed rocks and dried herb notes in this wine. It's really complex. It's got a long finish and it's very much in balance. I think you'll find it very delicious.
So the next wine in this month's Wine Club is a 3 Wine Company Old Vine Field Blend out of Contra Costa County. This is the 2014 vintage, and what we're looking at here is a blend of several different grape varietals. This is a classic blend back to really old California winemaking. A healthy percentage, about 75+% Zinfandel. There's some Carignan, there's some Petit Syrah. These are all really, really classic grapes that came up with the missionaries all up through Southern California and kind of stopped right here in kind of right around the Sonoma County area. So this is in Contra Costa, and they have a good amount of this old vine material. We're talking about vines here that are an average of 100 years old. So well before Prohibition, these vines were established, and they're even established and thriving, making really fantastic wine well before Cabernet really became a big, huge hit in Napa Valley, right here in Napa Valley where I live. So what this wine brings to the table is a lot of good density and a lot of concentration. These older vines are producing fruit that have a great amount of intensity, also this really kind of wild kind of bramble fruit, if you will, lots of cracked pepper, there's all kinds of dried herb. There's just a lot going on. You get everything brings a little something different to the blend here, and with the vines being so kind of old, if you will, and kind of ancient, they're kind of made in a very, very similar way to where they're actually blended together in a tank, crushed, and then co-fermented. And that co-fermentation makes something that you just really couldn't create with one singular grape varietal on its own. So let me go and give it a taste here. We'll go through it and talk about the value and a couple of different things that I think I would probably eat with this wine. So right off the nose came the whole range of fruit aromatics. So you have red fruits here, like kind of like candied raspberry, dried strawberry, probably coming from the Zinfandel. And then you have this really kind of bright purple, kind of black raspberry, purple plum, even blueberry note. I'm thinking the Petit Syrah is probably playing a part with this. You even have some darker earthy elements with some attar that's coming in, a little more animalistic. There's this almost black licorice kind of dark tarry kind of note to the wine, which I think really anchors the wine really well. And these aromatics kind of make me think of things like grilled meats, even a lightly seasoned barbecue, like a dry rub could be really, really great. Things with like cumin and paprika and even a touch of brown sugar and some tomato product. Just your classic barbecue. This wine is just really, really perfect. It has all that concentration. It's got all that spice already going on with it. The price point is crazy good for a wine of this quality and from vines this old with this much heritage and this much to say. And the fact that they've, this wine is now, 2014, they began to blend together and they're still really, really fresh, but everything's playing its part and it's all kind of coming together into one wine that's really over-delivering. Very complex, really quite rich, and I think you're going to absolutely love as much as I do.
The wine in my glass now is the 2011 vintage of the Campo alla Sughera Arnione Bolgheri Superiore. So this wine comes from Tuscany in Italy, and I think it's a fascinating discovery wine for those of you who maybe like wines from Italy or who like wines from Bordeaux or Bordeaux blends from places like California. Because even though this wine is from Italy, it actually is made from 4 different Bordeaux varieties: Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, and Petit Verdot. So these 4 varieties actually grow beautifully in this region, in Tuscany, and work together much the way they do in other regions like Bordeaux, except with a little bit of that fresh Italian acidity and a little bit of that sour cherry note you get from the region. So in the glass, it's pretty aromatic. There's lots of rose petal, sour cherry, a little bit of black plum and mocha on the nose. And then great fresh acidity. My mouth is watering. This really makes me think of lots of different foods I want to eat with this wine. Also, very fine-grained tannins, notes of that mocha coming back, again, sort of dried herbs, that sort of juicy cherry. This really is making me think of going to my favorite Italian restaurant and ordering a pasta with great tomato sauce and oregano. It would really pair with anything that you would pair with Italian food, but you could also pair it with foods you would also pair with a Bordeaux blend from Bordeaux.
Next one I get to share with you today with this month's wine club is the 2013 vintage here of the Carlo Ravello RG Barolo. Coming from the spectacular vintage of 2013, which is really kind of rich and forward and a lot of warmth in the fruit here. RG with this particular bottling stands for 2 of their best crus. Because they're blending 2 of the great crus of Barolo, they're not actually allowed to state them on the label, so they kind of use the initials of Roque and also Giacchini. So the blend here definitely showcases the house style. Very kind of forward, soft, ripe, rich kind of style of Barolo, kind of slightly in that kind of modern type camp. Usually I pick up really nice kind of savory oak notes, and I'm sure that this one's going to do the exact same thing. Let me go ahead and taste this right now, give you a quick tasting note on it, and give me a second. Yes, so very, very approachable in its youth. You know, they do have those really nice fine kind of grain tannins coming in, but the fruit core has a lot of warm, ripe, dark, deep fruit. Not really so much dark. I would say more red fruit dominant here. Ripe red plum, ripe dark red cherry. Kind of like that cherry skin, kind of like savory, tobacco, warm, kind of rose petal kind of profile. There's an element of smoke. There's rose petal in spades. There's also this kind of licorice anise kind of profile. This kind of rocky, warm, kind of soft earth that's been upturned, a little bit of mushroom. The wine is still rather primary, meaning that it has a huge life ahead of it still. The fruit core is still right there intact. It's not quite as vinous as it will become with age, and I love vinous aged Nebbiolos, and this wine has a big, long life ahead of it. It's very, very well made, has a lot of polish to it, a lot of soft, kind of rounded edges with that just tiny, you know, classic Barolo grip to it that absolutely makes me hungry. So when if I sip, Nebbiolo more than 3 or 4 times, I immediately, regardless of how hungry I am or how hungry I'm not, I start thinking of food. This immediately starts making me think of, I don't know, roasted duck, some lamb chops or some, lamb T-bones. Just really savory, kind of earthy mushrooms. Pasta would be beautiful. Bolognese, one of my favorite dishes in the entire world. Or just a slice of Reggiano Parmesan would be absolutely beautiful with this. Classic style of a modern Barolo. So not quite as traditional as some of the others, and I absolutely love it for what it is, and it's unabashedly what it is. Ripe, rich, lush, beautiful, elegant, polished style Barolo that's drinking very well from the gate and probably has another decade and a half in front of it.
The wine I'm tasting is the 2013 Toffanelli Charbono from Napa Valley. There's so much to say about this wine. So the grape variety is called Charbono. It's the same grape that you might know as Bonarda, grown elsewhere. In the whole state of California, there's only about 100 acres devoted to this variety, and it's often used in blends. So if you've tasted something like Dave Finney's Prisoner, it's a component of wines like that, these great red blends from California, but here it's bottled by itself. And what I love about this variety is it's really juicy, it's really floral, and it's got really soft tannins, which makes it very food friendly. So this is an estate wine, so it's all from a vineyard owned by Vince Toffanelli. He's been farming this vineyard for years organically. It's dry farmed, meaning he doesn't use any irrigation. And lots of people have been using this vineyard as their secret weapon, buying fruit from this vineyard and using it in their own wines. But this is Vince's own wine, and 2013 was an outstanding vintage in all of Napa Valley. So I think this is a great discovery wine if you like things like Zinfandel, sort of a juicy, more forward, fruity style of wine, but with a little bit more freshness. So in the glass, it's really floral, lots of violets and rose petal. There's a lot of purple fruit on this, blueberry and boysenberry in the glass with a little bit of spice. And then on the palate, frankly, it's just delicious. There's a lot of that blue fruit going on. Blueberry, a little bit of sort of baking spices on it as well, and a little bit of mocha on the finish. It's really fresh, but there's a lot going on. It's very juicy and the tannins are very soft. I think this is perfect for barbecue. So anytime you're gonna throw something on the grill, I would reach for this.
So this month's Pinot Noir selection here is one of my favorite producers. It's a relatively new producer. They started in 2007, and this is the Scribe 2016 Pinot Noir out of Carneros. Now, the Carneros region, for me, usually signifies really ripe, juicy, opulent fruit. Now, Andrew and Adam Mariani, behind the Scribe label here, take a slightly different approach to all of their farming, creating wines that have really great ripeness, but at a little bit more of a leaner, more chiseled kind of style of Pinot Noir here. So there's really great energy within this wine. Really tight kind of raspberry notes. There's also a little bit of cranberry, taut red cherry, and ample amounts of flesh and ripeness here, but really good precision, great definition, beautiful elegance. The wine here, when I'm smelling it, and when it goes on to the palate, it has a little bit of this energy. It's kind of has just a little bit of lift, a little bit of focus that I'm usually not used to seeing out of Carneros, which tends to have sometimes a really warm, opulent, juicy, sometimes even flabby kind of characteristic to it. This wine stays focused, it stays lean, and it really reminds me of the perfect wine I would enjoy in the afternoon. So I would serve it slightly cool. I'd drink about 2 or 3 glasses and I'd move on to another bottle, but I think it's an absolute beautiful way to actually enjoy your afternoon. Amazing effort here from the Mariani brothers and Scribe 2016 Carneros Pinot Noir. Hello. Today I get to taste you on one of my favorite wines in this month's wine club for April 2018 with Wine Excess. My name is Sir Lucero, Master Sommelier, and today we're going to be tasting the 2007 vintage of Grans Fassian's Trittenheimer Apotheke Riesling Spatlese. Now that's kind of a lot to say in one word, so let's just go over it a little bit. We have a wine here from the producer Grans Fassian, and it comes from this little village called Trittenheimer. Trittenheimer is actually one of the really kind of marquee villages within the area of the Mosel region of Germany. And it comes from a very specific single vineyard called Apotheke, which is actually, in German it means pharmacy, but the literal translation here isn't exactly pharmacy. It's in reference to an abbey, which is just in the neighboring vintage of Trier. So it's a little Absburg Abbey, and this particular wine has been making, or this particular estate has been making wine since 1624. So there's a good amount of history here. Riesling here is the grape. Spatlese level of ripeness essentially means that it's late picked. So we have a wine that has a little bit of off-dry, kind of slightly sweet characteristics to it, which I think is going to be absolutely perfect this spring and this summer. Now, the Mosel experienced an incredible vintage in 2007. And so this wine should perhaps show a little bit more of a riper character than Mosel's used to. When I think of Mosel Riesling, I think of green apple and really sharp kind of lime peel, almost like a margarita type saltiness in my wines sometimes. Now with the late harvest characteristic, of Spatlese, we're going to get into these kind of characteristics of like ripe peach and a little bit more stone fruit. Let me give it a taste and I'll confirm everything that I'm talking about as of right now. Okay, absolutely beautiful, pristine fruit here. So very ripe, warm vintage. We're talking about vineyards here that are grown pretty much at the border of the ability for viticulture to take place. Ripening grapes on a vine at the 49th parallel away from the equator in the northern hemisphere takes a good amount of precision. Now, this particular vineyard site is known for having very steep slopes. Southwestern facing slopes, they're right in the middle of this kind of slaty-like soil composition, which allows for a lot of really good drainage, which is important. Also allows for the really strong slope to absorb some of that solar radiation that takes place all day. Now in the 49th parallel, which is really quite far north of any of us here in the United States, to kind of give you an idea, Montreal is sitting right around the 45th parallel. At the 49th parallel, which is clearly well into Canada, they experience longer days, so longer daylight hours. Even though at cooler temperatures, this kind of slate soil warms up and radiates and kind of keeps this ripening cycle going later on into the evening, which really allows them to actually ripen grapes and make a late harvest wine like this Spatlese Apotheke. It's absolutely stunning. The flavor profiles of the wine, there still is that kind of crisp green apple, but we are getting into riper profiles. We're getting into that peach and that nectarine, a touch of apricot. There is piercing acid, but there's also this ripeness, this sweetness. There's a lush quality to the wine, but the wine is still very, very light on its feet. And truly, when we're talking about a wine estate that's been here since 1624, an area of the world where they've been growing wine for well over 2,000 years, we're just drinking a little bit of history right now. You get 10 years of bottle age on this wine. This wine is absolutely superb. It's definitely shows why this is one of the world-class wine growing regions for white wine in the world. Hope you enjoyed as much as I do.